Official agency records. Unaltered visual proof. Transparent enforcement. This is bodycam incident reports.
Step away from the vehicle now. Hands where I can see him.
I'm not a suspect. This car broke down. I'm waiting on a tow.
You don't get to decide that. Show me your ID.
I haven't committed a crime. You're escalating this for no reason.
Don't argue with me.
I'm not arguing. I'm documenting, and this ends badly for you.
Now!
Officer Kyle Braden's voice cracked slightly, betraying the adrenaline dumping into his system. His service weapon was drawn pointed directly at the chest of the man standing by the vintage 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS. But the man, Marcus Thorne, didn't flinch. He didn't tremble. He didn't beg. He stood with the terrifying calmness of a man who had stared down enemy combatants in Fallujah and Ramadi, a man who had seen things that would make Officer Braden's blood run cold. Marcus Thorne was a retired Sergeant Major of the United States Marine Corps, a recipient of the Silver Star, and currently a high-level security consultant for the Department of Defense. And Officer Braden, a 28-year-old patrolman with a history of aggression, was about to destroy his own life in 4K resolution. Before we unravel how this disgraceful abuse of power unfolded, I need you to do something for me. Scroll down and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from city, state, or country. And if you believe that our veterans deserve respect, not harassment, smash that like button right now. This story is going to make your blood boil, so buckle up. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 1 p.m. The Florida sun was beating down on the pavement of a quiet suburban street in Sarasota. Marcus Thorne had taken his prized Chevelle out for a maintenance run. He had spent 5 years restoring the car, a labor of love that helped him decompress after 30 years of active duty. But 20 minutes into the drive, the fuel pump had given out. It happens with old cars. Marcus wasn't stressed. He had pulled safely to the curb in a nice neighborhood, popped the hood, and called his insurance company's roadside assistance. They promised a tow truck within 45 minutes. Marcus was leaning against the fender, checking emails on his phone, waiting. He was dressed in khaki slacks and a navy blue polo shirt. He looked like exactly what he was, a successful middle-aged professional handling a minor inconvenience. Then he saw the patrol car. Officer Kyle Braden was cruising through the neighborhood on routine patrol. Braden had been on the force for 4 years. He was known in the precinct as a hotshot, an officer who was eager to make arrests and viewed every interaction as a potential combat scenario. He saw a black man standing next to an expensive classic car in an affluent, predominantly white neighborhood. He didn't see a broken-down motorist. He saw a suspect. Braden pulled up behind the Chevelle and didn't even run the plates. He exited his vehicle immediately, hand already resting on his holster. He didn't ask if Marcus needed help. He didn't ask if the car was broken. He went straight to aggression. "Hey, step away from the vehicle!" Braden shouted, closing the distance. Marcus looked up from his phone, annoyed but polite. "Afternoon, officer, just waiting on a tow. Fuel pump went out." "I said step away from the vehicle!" Braden yelled louder, ignoring the explanation. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Marcus straightened his posture. At 6 feet 2 inches, he was an imposing figure, physically fit, and carrying himself with an air of command that usually made junior officers snap to attention. "I'm driving my car, officer. Or I was until it broke down. Is there a problem?" "The problem is you loitering suspiciously near a high-value vehicle. I need to see some ID." Marcus sighed. He knew this game. He had taught constitutional law seminars to military police units. He knew exactly what his rights were. "Officer, I am not loitering. I am a stranded motorist. I have called for a tow truck. Unless you have reasonable, articulable suspicion that I have committed a crime, I am not required to provide identification." That was the moment Officer Braden decided he wasn't going to de-escalate. He was going to dominate. He unholstered his weapon. The sight of a firearm being drawn in a quiet residential neighborhood in broad daylight changed everything. The birds seemed to stop singing. A lawnmower down the street cut off. Residents, mostly retirees, enjoying their afternoon, began to step out onto their porches. "Officer, holster your weapon," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't a request. It sounded like a command from a drill instructor. You are pointing a loaded firearm at an unarmed citizen who has committed no crime. You are violating policy and the law. You are failing to identify that is obstruction. Braden shouted, moving laterally to keep Marcus in his sights. I have reports of car break-ins in this area. You fit the description. What description? Marcus challenged. A black man standing next to a car with the hood up in broad daylight. That is not a description of a suspect. That is racial profiling. And I will ask you again, what specific crime do you suspect me of committing right now? Braden didn't have an answer. There were no reports of break-ins that day. There was no dispatch call about a suspicious person. Braden had manufactured the justification on the spot to cover his own bias. But now he was too deep to back down. His ego, fragile and inflated by the badge on his chest, wouldn't allow him to admit he was wrong in front of the growing audience of neighbors. Turn around. Hands on your head, Braden screamed, his face flushing red. I am asserting my Fourth Amendment rights, Marcus stated clearly, ensuring his voice carried to the witnesses. A woman across the street, Mrs. Gable, a 68-year-old retired school teacher, already had her phone out and was recording. Marcus acknowledged her with a slight nod. I am not consenting to a search. I am not consenting to this seizure. I am waiting for a tow truck service. I'm not going to ask you again. Officer, listen to me very carefully, Marcus said. His hands raised to shoulder-height, palms open. I served 30 years in the United States Marine Corps. I have been in situations far more tense than this with men far more dangerous than you. You are trembling. Your trigger discipline is poor. You are scared because you realize you have made a mistake and you don't know how to fix it without losing face. But if you pull that trigger, or if you put those cuffs on me, you are ending your career. Just get back in your car, check the registration, and let me wait for my tow truck. It was the most sensible advice Officer Braden would ever receive. If he had listened, he might still be a police officer today. He could have walked to the Chevelle, run the tag, seen it belonged to Marcus Thorne, and apologized. He could have claimed he was just being extra careful. But Braden interpreted Marcus's calm logic as disrespect. He interpreted the assertion of rights as belligerence. That's it, Braden growled. He holstered his gun, but immediately pulled out his taser. Turn around or you're getting tased. You are under arrest for disorderly conduct and resisting an officer. Disorderly conduct? Marcus asked, incredulous. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't used profanity. I haven't moved from this spot. You're arguing that's resisting. Arguing the law is not resisting arrest. It is freedom of speech. Pennsylvania versus Mims. Terry versus Ohio. You need to learn your case law, son. Braden rushed forward. He didn't deploy the taser, but he grabbed Marcus's left arm and wrenched it behind his back. Marcus didn't fight back. He knew that any physical resistance, no matter how justified, would give Braden the excuse he needed to escalate to lethal force. Marcus allowed his arm to be twisted. He allowed his body to be spun around and slammed against the hot metal of his beloved Chevelle. You are making a grave mistake, Marcus whispered, his face pressed against the side panel of the car he had spent 5 years restoring. Shut up. Braden clicked the first cuff onto Marcus's wrist. At that exact moment, a large flatbed truck with APA towing emblazoned on the side turned the corner and began to slow down, its amber lights flashing. The irony was palpable. Just as the steel of the handcuffs bit into Marcus's wrists, the validation of his story rolled up 50 feet away. The air brakes of the tow truck hissed loudly, drawing everyone's attention. The driver, a burly man in his late 40s named Frank, hopped out of the cab looking confused. Hey, what's going on here? Frank called out, walking toward the scene. I'm here for a tow. Black Chevelle, Mr. Thorne. Marcus, now fully handcuffed, turned his head as much as he could. That's me, Frank. As you can see, this officer believes waiting for AAA is a criminal offense. Officer Braden looked at the tow truck. He looked at the driver. He looked at the open hood of the Chevelle. The realization should have hit him like a freight train. The suspect wasn't stealing the car, he was servicing it. The story checked out 100%. This was the off-ramp. This was the moment Braden could have said, "Okay, I see the truck. Let's get these cuffs off and sort this out." But Braden was blinded by what psychologists call sunk cost fallacy and a toxic mix of adrenaline and pride. He felt the eyes of the neighborhood on him. Mrs. Gable was still recording. Another neighbor, a retired dentist, was shouting, "He lives 3 streets over, you idiot! Leave him alone!" Braden couldn't handle the humiliation of being wrong, so he doubled down. "Step back!" Braden shouted at the tow truck driver. "This is an active crime scene. Do not interfere." "Crime scene." Frank scratched his head. "Buddy, the ticket says fuel pump failure. He's a platinum member." "I said step back." Braden pushed Marcus roughly away from the car. "You're going downtown." "Officer," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. "My wallet is in my back right pocket. In that wallet is my identification. If you reach in and take it out, you will see exactly who I am. You will see my address matches the registration. You will see there is no crime here." "I'll identify you at the station during processing," Braden spat. "Right now, you're going in for obstruction and resisting." "You are arresting me because your ego is bruised," Marcus stated. "And you are leaving a classic vehicle unattended on a public road after arresting the owner. That is a liability the city is not going to appreciate." "I'm having it impounded," Braden announced vindictively. "Don't you touch that car," Marcus said, the first hint of real anger entering his voice. "Frank, do not let him tow it to an impound lot. You have the work order. Take it to the shop as agreed." "I can't let him take it if it's impounded," Braden sneered. "It is not impounded until you file the paperwork," Marcus corrected him. "Right now it is a disabled vehicle with a prearranged tow. Frank, take the car." "I'm taking the car," Frank said, ignoring the officer and walking toward the Chevelle's winch points. "And I'm a witness to this nonsense." Braden wanted to argue, but he was overwhelmed. He shoved Marcus toward the patrol car. He forced Marcus's head down and pushed him into the cramped back seat. The plastic was hard, the space confining. For a man of Marcus's size, it was uncomfortable. For a man of his dignity, it was an insult. As Braden slammed the door, Marcus looked out the window. He saw Mrs. Gable recording. He looked right into the lens of her smartphone and gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Keep recording," the nod said. "This isn't over." Braden got into the driver's seat. He was breathing heavy, sweating profusely. He threw the car into drive and peeled away from the curb, leaving the innocent crime scene behind. The drive to the precinct took 18 minutes. It was the longest 18 minutes of Officer Kyle Braden's life, though he didn't know why yet. Usually when Braden arrested people, they screamed, they cursed, they kicked the windows, they begged, they offered bribes, they cried. This was the noise Braden was used to. It validated his authority. It made him feel like the calm professional dealing with the chaotic public. But Marcus Thorne said nothing. He sat perfectly still in the back seat, staring straight ahead. He didn't complain about the cuffs being too tight, though they were. He didn't ask where they were going. He didn't plead his case. He employed a technique he had mastered during SEER survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training decades ago. Absolute, disciplined silence. This silence began to eat away at Braden. The adrenaline was fading, and the cold reality of logic was creeping in. Braden replayed the last 10 minutes in his head. The tow truck, the neighbors filming, the calm voice, the specific citation of case law. "You know," Braden said, looking in the rearview mirror, trying to break the tension, "if you had just shown me your ID when I asked, none of this would have happened." Marcus didn't blink. He didn't respond. He looked through Braden as if the officer didn't exist. "I'm just doing my job." Braden continued, his voice sounding defensive even to his own ears. "We can't have people acting suspicious in neighborhoods like that." You get that right. Silence. You're making this harder on yourself, Braden said, but the threat sounded hollow. Braden turned on the radio to drown out the silence, but the silence was heavier than the noise. A pit started to form in Braden's stomach. He started thinking about the suspicious person report he had claimed to have. Dispatch logs were recorded. There was no call, he knew it. The sergeant would know it. What if he really is a lawyer, Braden thought. He cited those cases pretty fast. Braden glanced at the rearview mirror again. Marcus's eyes were closed now. He was meditating, controlling his heart rate, preparing for the battle ahead. He wasn't a victim in the back of a police car. He was a warrior in transport. As they pulled into the sally port of the police station, Braden felt a wave of nausea. He had a sinking feeling that he had brought a bomb into the station, not a criminal. He just didn't know how big the explosion was going to be. Have you ever seen someone realize they messed up before the consequences even hit? It's a painful thing to watch. Braden parked the car, turned off the engine, and sat there for a full 10 seconds before getting out. He was praying that Marcus would have a warrant, a suspended license, anything. He opened the back door. Let's go. Marcus stepped out, moving with dignity despite the shackles. He looked at the concrete walls of the station, then looked at Braden. Officer, Marcus said, breaking his silence for the first time in 20 minutes. Ensure your body camera is still recording. I want the intake procedure fully documented. It's on, Braden muttered. Good. You'll need it for your defense attorney. The booking area of the precinct was buzzing with the usual midday activity. Phones ringing, officers typing reports, the hum of fluorescent lights. When Braden walked in, guiding Marcus, a few heads turned. They saw a tall, well-groomed black man in business casual attire, handcuffed, looking more like a visiting dignitary than a criminal. The desk sergeant was Thomas Miller, a 58-year-old veteran of the force who was 2 years away from retirement. Miller had seen it all. He had a sixth sense for bad arrests, and his radar went off the moment he saw Braden's face. Braden looked pale. The prisoner looked confident. What do we have here, Braden? Sergeant Miller asked, looking over his reading glasses. Disorderly conduct resisting without violence obstruction. Braden rattled off the charges, but his voice lacked conviction. Where? North Side, over by the country club. Miller raised an eyebrow. What was the underlying crime? Suspicious behavior, loitering near a vehicle. It was my vehicle, Marcus interjected calmly. I was waiting for a tow truck. Miller looked at Marcus, then back at Braden. He was waiting for a tow truck. He refused to identify, Braden said quickly. He was belligerent. I asserted my Fourth Amendment rights, Marcus corrected, and the tow truck arrived before he put me in the car. Sergeant Miller sighed. He pointed to the metal counter. Empty his pockets. Let's get him processed. Braden moved to remove the handcuffs. As soon as Marcus's hands were free, he rubbed his wrists where the metal had dug in, leaving red welts. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. He placed it on the counter. Then he placed his watch, a Rolex Submariner, then a heavy challenge coin. Miller picked up the wallet. He opened it to find the driver's license. Marcus Aurelius Thorne. He typed the name into the system. The computer screen flashed. Miller stopped typing. He squinted at the screen. Then his eyes went wide. Braden. Miller said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Did you run him? The system was down in the car. Braden lied. Come look at this. Braden walked around the desk. The screen was filled with flags, but not criminal flags. Top secret security clearance. Active. Department of Defense contractor. Level 5. Concealed carry permit. Active federal. Vehicle registration 1970. Chevrolet. Owner Marcus Thorne. Miller reached back into the wallet and pulled out another ID card. It wasn't a driver's license. It was a retired military ID, rank Sergeant Major E9, and tucked behind it was a folded, laminated card that Miller recognized immediately because his own father had one. It was a card issued to recipients of the Silver Star for gallantry in action. The station went quiet. Miller looked at Braden with a mix of pity and disgust. "You arrested a Sergeant Major, a Silver Star recipient, for waiting for a tow truck." "I didn't know," Braden stammered. "He wouldn't tell me who he was." "I told you I was a citizen asserting my rights," Marcus said, his voice booming through the quiet room. "I didn't think my rank should matter. I thought being an American citizen was enough to not be kidnapped by the state." Miller slammed the file shut. "Uncuff him, now!" "But he resisted." Braden tried to argue. "I said uncuff him," Miller barked. "And go get the captain, immediately." Braden removed the handcuffs, his fingers fumbling. Marcus rubbed his wrists again. He looked at Sergeant Miller. "Thank you, Sergeant. I assume you served—" "Army. 82nd Airborne," Miller replied respectfully. "Semper Fi." Marcus nodded. "I need to make a phone call. Not for bail. For my JAG officer." Captain Robert Henderson burst through the door of his office 3 minutes later, trailing a terrified-looking Officer Braden. Henderson was a pragmatic man who hated lawsuits, and he could smell a 7-figure settlement wafting off this situation. He walked straight up to Marcus, who was standing by the booking desk, looking calm but stern. "Mr. Thorne," Henderson said, extending a hand. "I'm Captain Henderson. I am incredibly sorry for this misunderstanding." Marcus looked at the hand, then up at the captain's eyes. He didn't shake it. "This wasn't a misunderstanding, Captain. It was an unlawful detention and a kidnapping." Henderson retracted his hand slowly. "We are going to release you immediately. No charges will be filed. We can drive you back to your vehicle." "My vehicle is at the shop. The tow truck driver your officer threatened took care of it," Marcus said, "and I'm not leaving just yet." "Sir." "I want the footage," Marcus said. "I want the body camera footage from Officer Braden. I want the dash cam footage, and I want the intake video from this room preserved. I am formally notifying you of pending litigation." "Mr. Thorne, we can handle this internally." Henderson tried to soothe him. "Officer Braden will be disciplined." "Disciplined?" Marcus laughed a dry, humorless sound. "Captain, this officer pointed a loaded weapon at me because I hurt his feelings. He manufactured a suspicious person call that doesn't exist. I know it doesn't exist because I have a scanner app on my phone. He profiled me, he assaulted me, and he kidnapped me. If you think internal discipline is going to cut it, you are mistaken." Marcus turned to Braden, who was standing in the corner looking at the floor. "Look at me, son," Marcus commanded. Braden looked up. "You took an oath," Marcus said softly, "to support and defend the Constitution, not to enforce your will on people you think are beneath you. You disgraced that uniform today." Captain Henderson turned to Braden. "Braden, give me your badge and your gun." "Cap, put them on the desk. You're on administrative leave effective immediately pending an IA investigation. Get out of my station." The sound of the heavy gun belt hitting the counter was the only sound in the room. Braden, stripped of his authority, looked small. He looked like a child. He walked out the back door, his head hanging low. Marcus looked at the captain. "I'm going to need a ride home, but not in a patrol car. I've had enough of those for one day." "I'll drive you myself in my personal vehicle," Henderson offered. "That will be acceptable." The lawsuit was filed 4 days later. Marcus Thorne versus the city of Sarasota and Officer Kyle Braden. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a dissection. Marcus's lawyer, a ruthless civil rights attorney named Eleanor Vance, laid out the case with surgical precision. But the real damage didn't come from the court filings. It came from the court of public opinion. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had recorded the arrest, had sent the video to her grandson. Her grandson posted it on TikTok. The caption read, "Cop arrests Marine veteran for waiting for a tow truck. Watch until the end." The video exploded. 10 million views in 24 hours. The image of Marcus, calm and dignified, being shoved against his classic car while the AAA truck rolled up in the background was undeniable proof of incompetence and bias. Then the body cam footage was released via a FOIA request. The audio of Braden admitting, "I don't care who you are," went viral. Internet sleuths dug into Braden's past. They found that in his 4 years on the force, 85% of his resisting arrest charges were against black men. They found complaints that had been swept under the rug. The comments section was a war zone, but for once, almost everyone was on the same side. "I'm a white guy from Texas pro-police, but this is garbage. That officer needs jail time. The discipline of Mr. Thorne is incredible. I would have lost my mind. The tow truck pulling up is like something out of a movie script. You can't make this up." Major news networks picked it up. CNN had Marcus on for an interview. Fox News ran a segment on veterans mistreated by police. For a brief moment, the polarized nation was united in its disgust for Officer Kyle Braden. The investigation revealed that Braden had indeed falsified the suspicious person report. There was no call. He had just seen a black man in a nice car and assumed the worst. That assumption stripped him of his qualified immunity. The city attorney took one look at the case files, the video, and the public outcry and called the mayor. "Write the check," he said. "Do not let this go to trial. A jury will give him the keys to the city." 6 months after the incident, the settlement was finalized. The city of Sarasota agreed to pay Marcus Thorne $1.2 million in damages. Officer Kyle Braden was fired. The review board found him guilty of excessive force, unlawful arrest, falsifying police reports, and conduct unbecoming an officer. He was also decertified by the state board, meaning he could never work as a police officer in Florida again. Last anyone heard, he was working in a warehouse in Ocala, still blaming woke politics for his downfall, refusing to accept that his own prejudice was the architect of his destruction. But Marcus Thorne didn't keep the money. In a press conference held on the steps of the courthouse, Marcus announced the creation of the Thorne Legal Defense Fund for veterans. The entire $1.2 million would go toward providing legal representation for veterans who had been victims of police misconduct. "I didn't fight this battle for the money," Marcus told the reporters, his voice steady as a rock. "I fought it because I have the resources to fight it. I have the rank, the respect, and the knowledge. But what about the 22-year-old kid driving home from his night shift? What about the single mother loading her groceries? If they can do this to a sergeant major in broad daylight, imagine what they do in the dark." Marcus returned to his quiet life. He finished restoring the Chevelle. He still drives it on Sundays. But now when he sees a patrol car, he doesn't feel safe. He feels vigilant. The system worked this time, but only because the victim was perfect. Only because there was video. Only because Marcus Thorne was a hero. And that is the tragedy. Justice shouldn't require a silver star. It should be the default setting. As we end this story, I want you to sit with that thought. Why do we require our citizens to be extraordinary just to be treated with basic dignity? Thank you for reading this story. It's a heavy one, but it's one that needed to be told. If you believe in accountability, share this with someone. And I have one last question for you. Do you think the punishment for Officer Braden was enough, or should he have faced criminal charges for kidnapping? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe out there and see you in the next one.
This briefing is now complete. For more factual case reviews, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.